Hi, my name is Kimberly Creighton, and I did my case study analysis on the Oldsmar City Council first reading of Ordinance 2023-4, the Flood Ordinance Amendment. The first reading was on March 7th of 2023, and the second reading was on March 21st, 2023. It was basically an ordinance amendment to their flood regulations. They have the city of Oldsmar has participates in the CRS, which is the community rating system, in order to lower the flood costs of the flood insurance of the residents. In 1968, Congress passed the National Flood Insurance Act and created the National Flood Insurance Program. In an effort to create fiscal soundness, they also completed major overhauls of the program in 1973, 1994, 2004, 2012, and 2014. The changes were based on studies that they had done in consultations with experts. As of December 5th, 2022, the National Flood Insurance Program had paid out over $3.31 billion worth of aid to the state of Florida and survivors of Hurricane Ian, which hit Southwest Florida coast on September 28th of 2022. Without FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Program, survivors of flood events such as Hurricane Ian would likely not have the funds to jumpstart their recovery. It could cause people to be homeless for extended periods of time. FEMA sets up areas for them to reside while their homes are being fixed. The National Flood Insurance Program is managed by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is FEMA. The program provides insurance to help reduce the socioeconomic impacts of flooding. Most homeowners insurance does not include flood insurance. It's mainly for wind issues and fires. For most people, they're required to have flood insurance by their mortgage companies, especially if the mortgage company is federally backed. On occasion, people can afford to rebuild without having flood insurance. There aren't that many people that can afford that. Most people need insurance. They don't have the cash on hand to rebuild. A single flood event can cause billions of dollars worth of damage. So because of that, the FEMA has been required to create regulations that mitigate losses. One of the regulations is called the 50% rule. It basically says that if there's a habitable property that is below the base flood elevation, that if somebody wants to improve that home, just the structure of the property, it doesn't include the value of the entire property, but it's just the structure. Say your structure is worth $100,000 and it's below base flood elevation. In order to do any remodels or improvements to it, the most you can do is $50,000 because you can only do 50% of the structure's value. Windows can cost $30,000 in one, windows. Kitchen remodels can cost $30,000. So $50,000 is not that much when you're talking about home improvements that are on a large scale. And one of the things that the Oldsmar's, the ordinance amendment that's going to change the flood ordinance, that is actually going to make it easier for people that own property to add improvements like the windows or solar panels, doors, things that improve the wind resistance of the property and the energy efficiency of the property. In 2013, the city of Oldsmar adopted a 15-year cumulative flood insurance mitigation plan, which means that any improvements made on the structure within a 15-year period count toward the 50% rule. So Oldsmar did this because they are participating in the community rating system, and they've been participating since 1992, and they've successfully reduced the insurance premiums for their residents by 20% for properties that are located within the special flood hazard area, and 10% for properties outside of the special flood hazard area. So the Oldsmar City Council is one of the stakeholders, and they actually heard the first reading and approved the ordinance. It was Ordinance 23-04. They approved it. They approved it on March 7th. It was unanimous, and it would allow certain exemptions to the 15-year cumulative 50% rule. The city council is one of the stakeholders. The second stakeholder that I have listed is the city of Oldsmar. They've been participating in the community rating system since 1992, and they've been successful in lowering their flood insurance premiums. FEMA is another stakeholder. They administer the National Flood Insurance Program and create regulations as needed to mitigate losses. The United States of America has residents who live in flood-prone areas. They pay flood insurance premiums based on their community ratings, and they must comply with the regulations set forth by FEMA regarding their property. And then there are people living within the United States that do not live in flood-prone areas. They're responsible for funding some of the Federal Emergency Management Agency's need through taxes, but they may not need to participate in the flood insurance program. Certain home improvements, as I said earlier, such as installing impact-resistant windows, they make the structure safer from emergency events, and other improvements such as installing solar panels or shingles make a structure more energy efficient. Until recently, FEMA said that those types of improvements counted as a substantial improvement. Now they're allowing exemptions, and it makes complete sense. If we get wind but no flooding, then those impact-resistant windows will go a long way to helping citizens and residents keep their homes safe from the wind issues that go along with storms. The amendment that they created essentially allows residents to upgrade their homes and update things without needing it to count toward the 50% rule. Ms. Tatiana Childress is the expert that I briefly spoke to regarding the issue. I gave her my business card. I spoke to her briefly. I didn't really get to have an entire interview with her because it was a very fast process of determining which item to cover. One citizen spoke at the public hearing and noted that he was only able to upgrade his home by $60,000, which included new windows, and he was unable to remodel his home further because of the 50% cumulative rule. He actually asked the city of Oldsmar to make the ordinance retroactive when they did adopt it, if they did adopt it on the second reading. There was some discussion by the city of Oldsmar about completely removing the 15-year cumulative 50% rule. And the city manager basically said that when FEMA comes around to do the CRS review, that they were going to talk to them and see how it would impact the city's CRS rating if they did remove that 15-year cumulative 50% rule. So they did adopt the ordinance, as I stated, at the March 21st City Council hearing, and they did actually retroactively adopt the ordinance to August 24th of 2021, which was when FEMA updated their flood insurance rate maps. The flood insurance rate maps are a useful tool in determining if you're going to purchase property, whether you're purchasing property that is within the flood zones. It's really good information. It basically indicates where homes are located, whether they're in the X zone, which means they're outside of the possibility of the flood in 100 years. They have a very intricate way of determining how floods are, where water flows through. They have engineered studies that help determine which areas are in flood-prone areas. Most of Florida is in flood zones, either by normal flooding through rivers or by coastal flooding. In a storm event, storm surge can cause coastal flooding, and it can actually go pretty far into the land area that you wouldn't expect. In conclusion, I enjoyed doing this project. I learned a lot about the National Flood Insurance Program that I did not know about. And I enjoyed going to Oldsmar. I enjoyed talking to Ms. Childress briefly. And the City Council was very welcoming and inviting to me. Thank you.